I need to write this down while I still can, while my hands can still hold a pen steady enough to make the words legible. Someone needs to know what really happens at the Seaview Motor Lodge, perched on those jagged cliffs 40 miles north of Portland. Someone needs to understand why you should never, ever take that job, no matter how desperate you are. And God help me, I was desperate. My name is Marcus Chen, and 3 months ago I was facing the kind of perfect storm of failure that makes people do things they'd normally run from. The divorce had cleaned me out. Sarah got the house in Burlington, the good car, even the dog. I'd moved back to Maine to start over, but my credit was shot, my savings gone, and the only thing I had left was a 15-year-old Honda Civic with a grinding transmission and a check engine light that had been on since Obama's first term. I'd been sleeping in that car for 2 weeks when I saw the help wanted sign. It was October 12th, around sunset, and I was driving up Route 1 looking for a place to park for the night where the cops wouldn't hassle me. The autumn tourists had gone home, leaving the coastal towns feeling hollow and abandoned. That's when I saw it, a weathered wooden sign barely visible through the fog rolling in from the Atlantic. Seaview Motor Lodge, vacancy. And below that, in newer red letters, night clerk wanted, immediate start, $4,500 week, $3,500 per week for a night clerk position. I pulled into the gravel parking lot so fast my bald tires skidded. The motel looked exactly like what you'd expect from a place that had been clinging to those cliffs since the 1950s. Single story, 12 rooms in a long row, painted that particular shade of faded seafoam green that every old motel in New England seems to favor. The office sat at one end, its neon office sign flickering between full brightness and death. What struck me most was how close it sat to the cliff edge. The last 3 rooms couldn't have been more than 20 feet from a straight drop to the rocks below. I could hear the Atlantic crushing itself against those rocks, a rhythmic violence that made my teeth ache. The office door chimed when I pushed it open, one of those old mechanical bells that sounds like it's announcing something more significant than just another customer. The lobby was small, wood-paneled, and smelled like salt water and something else. Something sweet and cloying, like flowers left too long in a vase. You'll hear about the position. It wasn't a question. The woman behind the desk was maybe 60, dressed in a burgundy blazer that looked like it came from the same decade as the motel. Her hair was steel gray, pulled back so tight it stretched the skin of her face, and her eyes were the palest blue I'd ever seen on a living person. When she smiled, only her mouth moved. Yes, how did you know? It's the only reason anyone stops here anymore. She slid a clipboard across the counter. Fill this out, all of it. The application was standard stuff at first. Name, address, I put down my last real one, previous employment. But the questions got stranger as I went. Do you have any living relatives within 500 miles? Have you ever experienced sleep paralysis? Can you swim? Do you believe in God? That last one had 3 options. Yes, no, and it doesn't matter anymore. I checked the 3rd box. Mrs. Whitmore, that was her name, though she only told me after I'd signed everything, reviewed my application with those pale eyes scanning back and forth like a typewriter. You're perfect, she said finally, desperate enough not to ask questions, alone enough that no one will come looking if something happens, and just smart enough to follow instructions. She said it matter-of-factly, like she was describing the weather. That's a hell of a thing to say to someone you're hiring. Honesty is important here, Mr. Chen. It might save your life. She pulled out a manila folder from beneath the desk. The position is simple. You work the night shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 7 nights a week. You check in any late arrivals, though we rarely have guests anymore. You maintain the premises. You ensure the safety and comfort of our long-term residents. And most importantly, you follow the rules. She opened the folder and slid a laminated sheet across to me. It was titled Night Clerk Protocols. Seaview Motor Lodge in bold letters. Below were 15 numbered rules. Read them, memorize them, follow them exactly as written. No exceptions, no improvisations, no matter what you see or hear. I picked up the sheet. It's laminate yellow with age. The rules were typed, except for several handwritten additions in different inks, like they'd been updated over the years. Rule 1. The night shift begins at exactly 11 Sol p.m. You must be behind the desk when the clock strikes 11. Do not be early, do not be late. Rule 2. Room 3 is permanently occupied. Do not disturb the occupant. If you hear knocking from inside room 3, do not respond. If the occupant of room 3 calls the front desk, be polite but brief. Never agree to any requests. Rule 3. At midnight, you must walk the length of the motel and check that all exterior lights are functioning. If any light is out, replace the bulb immediately from the supply closet. Never leave a dark spot for more than 5 minutes. Rule 4. Room 7 must remain locked between 2 Dal AM and 4 Gars AM. If you hear sounds from room 7 during this time, turn up the radio in the office. Do not investigate. Rule 5. The ice machine will activate by itself at 1:47 AM. Let it run its cycle. Do not look inside the ice bin until after 2 hours AM. Clean any red ice immediately and dispose of it over the cliff. Rule 6. If someone checks in after midnight claiming to be Mr. Davidson, ask for the year of his birth. If he says 1958, give him the key to room 11. If he gives any other year, tell him there are no vacancies, and lock the office door. Rule 7. Every hour you must write the exact time in the logbook. Your handwriting must be legible. If you make a mistake, start a new line. Never cross out or write over previous entries. Rule 8. The phone will ring at 3:33 AM. Answer it on the third ring. Listen but do not speak. When the caller hangs up, write "call received" in the logbook. Rule 9. If you see wet footprints leading from the cliff edge to any room, do not follow them. Sprinkle salt along the trail and it will dry by morning. Rule 10. The vending machine in the alcove only accepts exact change. If someone asks you to make change after midnight, tell them the register is locked until morning. Never open the register between midnight and 5 AM. Rule 11. Room 12, the one nearest the cliff, has no guests. If you see lights on in room 12, do not investigate. If someone claims to be staying in room 12, check the register. You will find no record. Smile and suggest they tried a Comfort Inn 20 miles south. Rule 12. At 4:44 AM, stand facing away from the windows for exactly 60 seconds. Count aloud. Do not turn around no matter what you hear or feel behind you. Rule 13. If a woman in a yellow raincoat asks to use the phone, let her. She will dial a number and cry for exactly 3 minutes. Offer her tissues but nothing else. She will leave a $5 bill on the counter. Put it in the envelope marked Margaret in the bottom drawer. Rule 14. The coffee maker must be started at 5 AM sharp. Use 3 scoops from the red can, never the blue. If you smell almonds, throw the entire pot over the cliff and start again. Rule 15. Your shift ends at 7 AM when Mrs. Whitmore arrives. Do not leave even 1 minute early. Do not stay even 1 minute late. Tell her anything unusual that occurred. She will know if you lie. I read through them twice, my mouth getting drier with each pass. These are insane. These are necessary. Mrs. Whitmore's tone hadn't changed. This motel has been here since 1953. It has survived hurricanes, nor'easters, and things far worse because we follow the rules. Break them and you join the long list of night clerks who thought they knew better. How many night clerks have you had? She tilted her head, considering. You'll be the 17th since I took over in 1987. 3 retired successfully. The rest didn't. I should have run. Every rational part of my brain was screaming at me to thank her for her time and get back in my dying Honda and drive until I hit Canada. But the paper in her hand, the one she'd pulled from the folder while I read the rules, had numbers on it. My first week's pay, in cash, in advance. Why? I asked. Why pay so much for someone to follow a bunch of weird rules? Because Mr. Chen, this motel serves a very specific purpose. It's a way station, a border crossing of sorts. Some things need to pass through and some things need to be kept out. The rules maintain that balance. As long as someone follows them, the motel stands, and the things that would very much like to cross over don't. She stood up, smoothing her blazer. Your shift starts in 3 hours. There's a small apartment behind the office, bed, bathroom, hot plate. You can stay there during the day. First week's pay is there in an envelope on the counter. I suggest you get some rest. The first night is always the hardest. She walked to the door, then paused. One more thing, Mr. Chen. You asked if I believe in God. I checked the same box you did, 34 years ago. Now I believe in something else, something that requires much simpler worship. Follow the rules, and you might live long enough to believe in it too. The bell chimed as she left, and I was alone in the office of the Seaview Motor Lodge with $30,500 in cash and a laminated list of impossibilities. I took the money. Of course I took the money. I was sleeping in my car and down to my last $12. I moved my few possessions into the small apartment behind the office. It was clean, sparse, but compared to the Honda's back seat, it was luxury. I set 3 alarms on my phone for 10:45 p.m., though I needn't have bothered. I couldn't sleep. I just lay on the narrow bed, listening to the ocean slam against the cliffs and reading those rules over and over until I could recite them from memory. At 10:55 p.m., I positioned myself behind the front desk, watching the old clock above the door. The minute hand crawled toward 12 like it was moving through molasses. At 10:59, something shifted in the air pressure, making my ears pop. The fluorescent lights flickered once. The clock struck 11. Night 1. Nothing happened at first. I sat behind the desk, hyper-aware of every sound. The ice machines hum, the waves below, the wind rattling the windows. I'd brought the rule sheet with me, set it on the desk where I could see it. The office felt smaller at night, the dark pressing against the windows like it wanted in. 11:47 p.m. Write the time in the logbook. Check. The grandfather clock in the corner. I hadn't noticed it during my interview. Ticked loud enough to echo. Each second felt deliberate, measured, like something counting down rather than up. I tried to distract myself by familiarizing myself with the office. There was an old CRT television on a shelf, dozens of keys hanging on hooks behind the desk, and a radio that looked like it had survived World War II. The guest register was leather-bound and thick, going back years. I flipped through it idly, noting how few guests had checked in recently. The last entry was from 2 weeks ago, a Mr. Thomas Burke from Connecticut, room 8, one night only. His checkout time was listed as 3:33 a.m. Midnight came faster than expected. Time moves strangely when you're afraid. I grabbed a flashlight from beneath the desk and stepped outside for my first perimeter check. The Atlantic wind hit me immediately, carrying salt and something else, something organic and wrong, like seaweed left to rot in the sun. The motel stretched out to my right, 12 identical doors, 12 dark windows. The exterior lights were those old-fashioned ones, the kind that attract moths in summer. Now they just illuminated empty spaces, casting shadows that seemed too dark, too deep. I walked slowly, checking each bulb. They all worked, casting their sickly yellow light in perfect circles on the cracked pavement. Room 1, room 2, room 3. I paused there, remembering the rule. Permanently occupied, do not disturb. The curtains were drawn, but I thought I saw them twitch as I passed. Just wind, I told myself. Ocean wind does strange things. Room 4, 5, 6, all dark and quiet. Room 7's door was different from the others, newer, metal instead of wood, with 3 deadbolts. I checked my phone, 12:09 a.m. Not time to worry about that yet. I continued past rooms 8, 9, 10, and 11, all their lights functioning. Then I reached room 12, the last one, barely 15 feet from where the pavement ended and the cliff began. There was no safety rail, no fence, just a straight drop to the black water below. The light above room 12's door was on, but something was wrong with it. It flickered in a pattern. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. SOS in Morse code. I unscrewed it quickly and replaced it with a bulb from my pocket. The new one shone steady and still. I practically ran back to the office. 12:47 a.m. Time logged in the book. My handwriting was shakier than I'd like. 1 a.m. Another time entry. The waiting was the worst part. At 1:47 a.m. exactly, the ice machine roared to life. The sound was tremendous, like a jet engine starting up. I could hear it through the walls, grinding and churning. I watched the clock, waiting for 2 a.m., trying not to think about what red ice might mean. At 2 a.m. sharp, I walked to the ice machine, which had gone quiet at 1:58. The alcove where it sat smelled like copper and frost. I lifted the bin lid with the edge of my flashlight, not wanting to touch it directly. The ice was mostly normal, those perfect hotel half moons, except for 3 pieces near the top that were dark red, almost burgundy. They looked like frozen blood, and when I picked them up with the plastic scoop, they were heavier than ice should be. I carried them outside, trying not to look too closely at what might be frozen inside them, and hurled them over the cliff. They disappeared into the darkness without a sound. 2:47 a.m. Logged. My pen slipped, making a small ink blot. I started a new line as instructed. At 3 a.m., I heard it, a sound from room 7. It started as a scratching, like fingernails on wood, then became a rhythmic pounding. Thump, 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 perfectly spaced, perfectly measured. I turned on the ancient radio, spinning the dial until I found static loud enough to drown it out. The pounding continued until exactly 4 a.m., then stopped mid-thump, like someone had thrown a switch. At 3:33 a.m., the phone rang. I'd been expecting it, watching the clock, but the sound still made me jump. It was an old rotary phone, black bakelite, and its ring was sharp and demanding. Once, twice. On the 3rd ring, I picked up, breathing, wet, labored breathing, like someone with lungs full of water trying to speak. Then a voice, barely a whisper. "Can you see me?" I said nothing, as instructed. "I'm so cold. The water is so cold. Can you see me?" I'm waving. I looked toward the windows facing the ocean. Nothing but darkness and my own reflection. "Please," the voice gurgled. "Please just tell me you can see me. I've been waving for so long." The breathing got heavier, more desperate. I could hear water dripping, like the caller was soaking wet. Then a sound like someone choking, gasping, drowning. The line went dead. I wrote "call received" in the logbook. My hand was steady this time. I was getting better at this. 3:47 a.m. Time logged. At 4:44 a.m., I stood up from the desk and faced the back wall, away from the windows. I started counting aloud. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. At 15, I heard the front door open, the bell chiming. At 30, wet footsteps crossed the floor. At 45, something breathing right behind me, close enough that I felt moisture on my neck. At 55, a hand, cold and soft, like something that had been in water too long, touched my shoulder. 60, I said, and turned around. The office was empty, the door was closed, but there were wet footprints on the floor, leading from the door to where I'd been standing, then back again. Seaweed clung to the doorknob. I sprinkled salt on the footprints as instructed. They dried immediately, leaving only the faint outline of bare feet. 4:47 a.m. Logged, though my handwriting was getting worse. 5 a.m. came like a mercy. I started the coffee maker, using 3 scoops from the red can as instructed. The smell of brewing coffee was so normal, so mundane, that I almost cried. No almond scent, thank God. The rest of the shift passed quietly. No one came to the door, no more calls, no more sounds from the rooms. When Mrs. Whitmore walked in at exactly 7 a.m., I was ready with my report. The ice machine produced 3 pieces of red ice, disposed of as instructed. Room 7 was active from 3 bugs to 4 hours. The 3:33 call came as expected. The 4:44 visitor left footprints. Salt was applied. She nodded, satisfied. Any problems with the rules? No, Mom. Good. Sleep well, Mr. Chen. You did better than most on their first night. I stumbled back to the small apartment and collapsed on the bed. Despite my exhaustion, sleep wouldn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that wet breathing from the phone, felt that soft, waterlogged hand on my shoulder. When I finally drifted off, I dreamed of standing at the cliff's edge, looking down at the black water, where something waved up at me with arms that had too many joints. Night 2, I woke at 3 p.m. to the sound of hammering. Someone was doing repairs. On one of the rooms, I could hear the rhythmic pounding of a hammer and the occasional screech of old nails being pulled from wood. Normal sounds, human sounds. I clung to them as I made instant noodles on the hot plate and tried not to think about the coming night. By 10:30 p.m., I was showered, dressed, and reading through the rules again. I'd written them down in a small notebook, adding my own observations from the first night. Next to Rule 8, I'd written, caller seems to be drowning victim. Female, wants acknowledgement. Next to Rule 12, something comes at 4:44, don't look. Mrs. Whitmore was waiting for me when I entered the office at 10:55. There's something you should know, she said without preamble. Tonight is October 14th, the anniversary. Anniversary of what? The Jacobson family, 1978. They were in room 12 when the storm took them. The whole section of cliff just gave way. Room and all, straight into the ocean. She stared out the window toward room 12. They rebuilt it, of course. Had to. The motel needs 12 rooms, but sometimes on the anniversary, the family comes back. Comes back? Just remember the rules, Mr. Chen. They can't hurt you if you follow the rules. She left before I could ask anything else. 11 p.m. Clock struck. Shift began. The first hour was quiet. I logged the time, checked the perimeter at midnight, all lights functioning, and settled in for what I hoped would be a repeat of the previous night. Strange, but manageable. I should have known better. At 12:47 a.m., as I was making my log entry, the bell above the door chimed. A middle-aged man walked in, wearing a rain slicker despite the clear night. Water dripped from him, pooling on the floor. Room for 4? He asked, his voice strangely flat. I looked at the register. We had plenty of empty rooms, but something was wrong. The man's eyes didn't blink. They just stared, filmy and grey like a fish that had been dead for days. Just yourself, sir? I asked carefully. No, 4, my family. We need room 12. We always stay in room 12. My hand found a rule sheet under the desk. Rule 11. Room 12 has no guests. I'm sorry, but I don't show any vacancies in room 12. Perhaps another room. The man tilted his head at an angle that made my neck ache just looking at it. Room 12. We always stay in room 12. Check again. I made a show of looking at the register. No, sir. No room 12 available. May I suggest the Comfort Inn 20 miles south? He stood there for a long moment, water dripping steadily onto the floor. Then his wife walked in, followed by 2 children, a boy and girl, maybe 8 and 10. They were all soaking wet, all with those same grey, filmy eyes. Daddy, I'm cold, the little girl said, and when she opened her mouth, water poured out onto the floor. Room 12, the man said again, more insistent now. We need our room." "The Comfort Inn," I repeated, my voice surprisingly steady. 20 miles south." The family stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Then, without a word, they turned in unison and walked out. Through the window, I watched them walk toward room 12. They stood at the door for a moment, then simply weren't there anymore. I added a note to the logbook. "Jacobson family attempted check-in, directed to Comfort Inn as per Rule 11. At 1:47 a.m., the ice machine started again. This time, there were more red pieces, 7 of them, and one had something inside it. It looked like a tooth. I threw them all over the cliff, trying not to gag. At 2:15 a.m., I was reading a paperback I'd found in the desk drawer when someone knocked on the office door. Not the bell chime of someone entering, a deliberate knock. I looked up to see a woman in a yellow raincoat standing outside. She was crying. Rule 13. I let her in. She was maybe 40, pretty in a worn-down sort of way, with dark hair plastered to her head by rain that wasn't falling. She walked to the phone without saying a word, picked it up, and dialed. I couldn't see what number she pressed. Her fingers moved too fast, too many times. Then she cried, not sobbing, not wailing, just a steady stream of tears while she held the phone to her ear. She whispered something over and over, but I couldn't make out the words. After exactly 3 minutes, she set the phone down, placed a $5 bill on the counter, old style, from maybe the 1960s, and walked out. I put the bill in the envelope marked Margaret as instructed. There were dozens of other $5 bills in there, all different ages, going back decades. The pounding in room 7 started early tonight, 2:45 a.m. instead of 3 a.m. It was louder too, more violent. The whole wall shook with each impact. I turned the radio up, found a station playing old jazz, but I could still hear it underneath. Whatever was in room 7 wanted out badly. At 3:33 a.m. the phone rang. Same wet breathing, same desperate voice. "Can you see me now? I'm closer. I made it to the rocks." I said nothing. "It's so cold. My children are so cold. We just wanted room 12. We always stayed in room 12. "Mrs. Jacobson. It had to be. Please," she sobbed, water gurgling in her throat. "Just look out the window. Just see us. If someone sees us, maybe we can stop swimming." The line went dead. Call received. Logged. At 4 a.m., when the pounding in room 7 stopped, I heard something else. Footsteps on the roof. Slow, measured, walking from one end of the motel to the other, then back again. Then they stopped directly above the office. At 4:44 a.m., I turned away from the windows and started counting. This time, at 20 seconds, I heard breathing from multiple sources. At 30, children giggling. At 40, someone whispered, "Room 12," over and over. At 50, the whispers became screams. 4 voices, a family's worth, screaming as they fell. At 60, silence. When I turned around, the Jacobson family stood outside the window, pressed against the glass. All 4 of them, grey-faced and dripping, staring at me with those clouded eyes. The children waved slowly, mechanically, like they were underwater. Then they turned and walked toward the cliff. I watched them reach the edge and keep walking, disappearing into the darkness. 5 a.m. Coffee started, no almond scent. My hands shook as I measured the grounds. At 5:47 a.m., something new happened. A man walked into the office, tall, thin, wearing an expensive-looking suit that seemed untouched by the ocean wind. He had the kind of face you forgot the moment you looked away from it. "Mr. Chen," he said, though I hadn't told him my name. "How are you finding the position?" "It's interesting." He laughed, a sound like ice cracking. "That's one word for it. Tell me, has Mrs. Whitmore explained what this place really is?" "A way station," she said, "a border crossing. Accurate, but incomplete." He walked around the office, running his fingers along surfaces, examining things with an appraiser's eye. This motel sits on what you might call a soft spot in reality. Things that shouldn't exist find it easier to exist here. The rules keep them manageable, contained to specific times and spaces. Who are you? I've had many names. Currently, I'm Mr. Davidson. He smiled, and for a moment I saw too many teeth. I'm what you might call a regular. I pass through every few months, checking on things, making sure the balance holds. The balance between your world and theirs. The things that want in, Mr. Chen, you wouldn't believe what they do to your reality if they could fully manifest. This motel, these rules, they're like a pressure valve. They let just enough through to prevent a complete rupture. And if someone doesn't follow the rules, his face went serious. Then the valve opens too wide. Things get through that shouldn't. The last time that happened was 1987. Mrs. Whitmore was the only survivor. She learned quickly after that. He moved toward the door. You're doing well, Mr. Chen. Better than most. Keep following the rules. Oh, and next time I check in, my birth year is 1958. Remember that. He left, and I realized I couldn't remember what his face looked like. Mrs. Whitmore arrived at 7 a.m. sharp. I gave my report, including the Jacobson family and Mr. Davidson. Davidson was here. She looked troubled. He's early. He usually doesn't come until the winter months. He said he was checking on things. Yes, he does that when he senses instability. Something's building, Mr. Chen. The barriers are thinning. The blue moon is coming. Blue moon? October 31st. The second full moon this month. They're always bad here. The last one, she trailed off. Just be extra careful as we get closer. The rules might start changing. Changing? You'll find addendums, corrections. Read them carefully. They appear for a reason. She handed me an envelope. Your second week's pay in advance. You've earned it. Another $3,500. I took it, hating myself a little for how quickly my fear was being overruled by need. Night 3, I found the first addendum at 10:45 p.m., written in fresh ink on the laminated rule sheet, which should have been impossible. Below Rule 15, in handwriting I didn't recognize, Rule 15.5, if the tide is high on the night of October 15th, Room 3's occupant may request fresh towels. Bring exactly 2, knock 3 times, leave them outside the door, and walk away without looking back. I checked my phone's weather app. High tide was at 2:17 a.m. Mrs. Whitmore didn't mention this when she left. Either she didn't know, or she wanted to see how I'd handle it. I found towels in a supply closet that smelled like mothballs and something medicinal. I set 2 aside, the whitest ones I could find. 11 p.m. came with a new sensation, the feeling of being watched. Not just observed, but studied, catalogued, evaluated. The sensation crawled over my skin like insects. Midnight perimeter check. All lights functioning except room 6, which had burned out. I replaced it quickly, but in those few seconds of darkness, I saw something move inside the room through the window. A shadow that didn't match any furniture that should have been there. At 1:15 a.m., a car pulled into the parking lot. The first actual guest I'd seen. It was a newer model Toyota, Massachusetts plates. A young woman got out, early 20s, looking exhausted and road-worn. "Thank God you're open," she said, coming into the office. "I've been driving for hours and everything else is closed." I felt a genuine pang of concern. She was normal, human, alive. She didn't belong here. "Are you sure you want to stay here?" I asked carefully. "The Comfort Inn. It's 20 miles south, I know. I saw the sign, but I can barely keep my eyes open." She pulled out a credit card. "One night, whatever room you have." I stared at the credit card, then at her. She was real, a real person who had no idea what kind of place this was. "We only take cash," I lied. She dug through her purse, pulled out $40. "This is all I have until I can find an ATM." $40 wouldn't get her a room anywhere else. I made a decision that probably broke some unwritten rule. Room 8 is available. Stay inside once you close the door. Don't open it for anyone or anything until after sunrise, no matter what you hear or who claims to be at your door." She looked at me strangely. "That's specific. Promise me." Something in my tone must have gotten through because she nodded slowly. "Okay, I promise." I gave her the key to room 8, watched her drive down and park in front of it. She went inside and I heard the deadbolt turn. Good. At 1:47 a.m., the ice machine activated. I was ready at 2 a.m., but this time all the ice was clear. Small mercies. At 2:17 a.m., high tide. The phone at the desk rang. Not at 3:33 like it was supposed to. My hand hesitated over the receiver. This wasn't in the rules. I picked it up. "Fresh towels." The voice was deep, cultured, with an accent I couldn't place. Something old about it, like recordings of people from the 1920s. "2 fresh towels, if you please." "Room 3's occupant." "Yes, sir, right away." "Good man. 3 knocks, leave them outside, don't look back. You know the drill." The line went dead. I grabbed the 2 towels I'd set aside and walked to room 3. The door was different from the others. Older, the wood so dark it was almost black, with symbols carved into the frame that hurt to look at directly. I knocked 3 times, set the towels on the concrete, and turned to walk away. "Mr. Chen." I froze. I hadn't heard the door open. "Don't turn around, Mr. Chen. That's not a rule, just friendly advice. But tell me, do you know what you're guarding here?" "A way station," I said to the darkness in front of me. "A border crossing." Partially true, but more accurately, you're guarding a prison. This motel, these rooms, they're cells. Each one holds something that can't be allowed to roam free. Some of us are here voluntarily, like myself. We made deals, you see. Eternal existence in exchange for eternal confinement. Others, he paused, and I heard something that might have been fingers drumming on wood, except it sounded like there were too many fingers. Others are here against their will. Room 7? Ah, you've heard our friend in room 7. He was human once, a serial killer, actually. 1963. He liked to take people apart to see how they worked. The thing in room 7 is what he became after his execution, when he tried to make a deal with things that should never be dealt with. Now he takes himself apart and puts himself back together every night from 2 to 4, trying to find the configuration that will let him escape. Why tell me this? Because you're interesting, Mr. Chen. You helped that girl. Gave her room 8, the safest room in the motel. Even warned her. That shows character. Most night clerks are either too scared or too callous to care about random guests. She didn't deserve to be here. No one deserves to be here, yet here we all are. I heard the towels being picked up. Thank you for the towels. Oh, and Mr. Chen, check the supply closet tomorrow. Bottom shelf behind the bleach. There's a journal there from the night clerk before you. Not the one who quit, the one from 6 months ago. You might find it illuminating. The door closed with a soft click. At 3 a.m., room 7 started its pounding right on schedule, but tonight I could hear something else underneath it. Wet, tearing sounds, like someone pulling apart raw chicken. The radio helped, but not enough. At 3:33 a.m., the phone rang. I prepared for the drowning woman, but this time it was different. A child's voice. "Mister, we can't find our room." I said nothing. "We're supposed to be in room 12, but it's not there. It's just empty air. Mommy says we fell, but I don't remember falling. Can you help us find our room?" Still, I said nothing. "It's cold in the water. Daddy says if we find our room, we can be warm again. Please, mister, we just want to be warm." The child started crying, then choking, then the line went dead. Call received, logged. At 4:15 a.m., I heard a scream from the direction of room 8. The girl. I grabbed the master keys and ran outside. Rules be damned. Her door was still closed, but I could see shadows moving outside it. multiple figures trying to peer through the curtains. "Hey," I shouted, "get away from there." The figures turned toward me, and I immediately wished they hadn't. They looked human-shaped, but wrong, like someone had tried to draw a person from memory and gotten the proportions off. Two long arms, necks that bent in too many places, faces that seemed to shift when I looked directly at them. "She doesn't belong here," one of them said in a voice like grinding glass. "She's untouched, unclaimed. We have rights to the unclaimed." "She's a guest," I said, surprising myself with my firmness. "She paid for the room. She's under the motel's protection until checkout." They tilted their heads in unison, considering. "When is checkout?" I thought fast. "Noon. Standard checkout is noon. We'll wait." They dissolved into shadow and flowed away like oil down a drain. I knocked on the girl's door. "It's the clerk. Are you okay?" "What the fuck were those things?" Her voice was shaky but angry. "Good. Anger was better than paralysis. Just stay inside until sunrise. Actually, stay until noon. I'll knock when it's safe. This place is wrong." Yes it is. Just stay inside." At 4:44 a.m., I stood facing away from the windows. This time, when the counting started, I heard multiple visitors enter. The bell chimed over and over. 5, 6, 7 times. Wet footsteps, dry footsteps, something that sounded like claws on linoleum. At 30 seconds, they surrounded me. At 45, something breathing on my neck smelled like formaldehyde. At 55, a child's voice whispered, "Turn around and play with us." At 60, I turned. The office was empty, but every surface was covered in handprints. Wet ones, bloody ones, ones that looked burned into the wood. They faded as I watched, leaving only the memory of their presence. 5 bars a.m., coffee time. The normalcy of it felt like an insult to everything that had happened. At 5:30 a.m., I remembered what room 3's occupant had said. I went to the supply closet, found a journal behind the bleach. It was a leather-bound notebook, water-damaged and smelling of mold. The first page had a name. Property of Eugene Marsh, night clerk, April-September. I opened it randomly and read, May 15th. The lady in room 9 asked me to dance with her tonight. I know I shouldn't have, but she looked so sad. We waltzed in the parking lot while she hummed something old. When we stopped, she thanked me and said I reminded her of her husband. Then she walked backward into her room, never breaking eye contact. I can still feel her cold hands on mine. June 3rd, Mr. Davidson came through. Birth year 1958, just like always. He paid for his room with coins that had faces I didn't recognize. Presidents that never were, he said, from timelines that got erased. He told me the motel exists in multiple realities simultaneously. That's why the rules work. They're agreements across dimensions. July 20th. I saw what's really in room 7 tonight. The door was cracked open and I looked. I shouldn't have looked. It's not a man anymore. It's a collection of parts that remembers being a man. It builds itself into different shapes, trying to find one that God will accept. It can't. August 10th. Mrs. Whitmore isn't human. I'm sure of it now. I saw her shadow move independently of her body today. It went into room 1 while she was in the office. When it came back, it was fuller somehow, like it had eaten something. She must know I saw because she's been extra nice to me lately. That's scarier than if she'd been angry. September 8th. The blue moon is coming. Halloween night. Mrs. Whitmore says it happens every few years. The barriers collapse completely for one night. Last time, in 2019, she had to seal 3 clerks in room 11 to contain what came through. She says this time will be worse. The central node is awakening. I'm going to quit tomorrow. The money isn't worth this. The last entry was September 9th. I tried to quit. Mrs. Whitmore said, okay, just finish tonight's shift. But when 7 a.m. came, she wasn't here. The doors won't open. The phone doesn't work. It's been 3 hours now. I can hear something large moving under the motel, in the ground. It knows I try to leave. They always know when you try to leave. If anyone finds this, the entry ended mid-sentence. Mrs. Whitmore walked in at exactly 7 a.m. I showed her the journal. "Ah," she said. "Eugene." "Yes." He panicked and tried to leave before his contract was up. The motel doesn't like that. Contract? You never mentioned a contract. Didn't I? Oh, it's nothing formal. Just an understanding. You work until the blue moon passes and then you're free to go. With a substantial bonus, of course. Eugene would have made it if he'd just waited 3 more weeks. What happened to him? He became part of the infrastructure. The motel needs certain components to function. Living components. Eugene serves a purpose now. Down in the basements we don't have. Basements you don't have? The motel exists in multiple phases of reality, Mr. Chen. We have rooms that only exist on certain nights. Basements that only exist when needed. And guests who are never born but check in regularly. Eugene maintains the generators in the basement level that doesn't exist. He's quite happy now, I'm told. No more fear when you're part of the machine. She smiled that smile where only her mouth moved. Your 3rd week's pay. Another envelope. Another $3,500. The blue moon is in 2 weeks, I said. Yes, survive that and you'll have earned your freedom. And the $50,000 bonus. $50,000 plus the weekly pay. It would be enough to start over properly, get a real apartment, maybe go back to school. What happens on the blue moon? Everything you've seen so far? That's the motel being polite. On the blue moon, it shows its true face. The permanent residents can fully manifest. The things we keep out try to force their way in. And something else happens. Something I've only seen 3 times in my 34 years here. What? The central node wakes up. The thing that created this soft spot in reality. It rises from beneath the motel to feed. And we, Mr. Chen, have to make sure it feeds on the right things. Otherwise, it might decide to feed on the town, or the state, or more. She left before I could ask anything else. I went back to my room and found the girl from room 8 waiting outside my door. "I need answers," she said. So I told her everything, the rules, the entities, what this place really was. She listened without interrupting, her face going paler with each detail. "I need to leave," she said when I finished. "Noon. You can leave at noon. Just drive away and never come back. Never even think about this place. What about you?" "I have to stay until Halloween. I need the money." It sounded hollow even to me. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about Eugene and his non-existent basement. It was about the Jacobson family, unable to stop drowning. It was about whatever was coming on the blue moon. She left at exactly noon, peeling out of the parking lot like the hounds of hell were chasing her. I envied her. Night 4. The rules had changed again. When I arrived for my shift, there were 3 new additions. Rule 16. Starting October 16th, check the basement door at 1 cars a.m. If it exists, ensure it remains locked. If it doesn't exist, ensure it remains non-existent. Rule 17. The vending machine now stocks items from multiple timelines. Only purchase items you recognize. Consuming unfamiliar products may result in temporal displacement. Rule 18. If you encounter yourself during the shift, do not interact. You are from a failed timeline. Acknowledging the paradox will collapse both timelines. I stared at Rule 18 for a long time. If you encounter yourself, not if you think you see yourself, or if something appears to be you. Just a matter-of-fact acknowledgement that I might meet another version of me. Mrs. Whitmore was humming when she left, an old tune I didn't recognize. She'd never hummed before. 11 p.m. Shift began. The air felt different tonight, thicker, charged with static electricity. My hair stood on end the moment the clock struck 11. 11:30 p.m. A family of 4 checked in. Normal looking, tired from the road, 2 kids asleep in the back seat of their minivan. I wanted to turn them away, but they had cash and knew exactly what room they wanted. "Room 5, please," the father said. "We stay there every year." I checked the register. Room 5 had been occupied every October 16th for the past 15 years, always by the Morrison family. "Welcome back," I said, handing them the key. They walked to their room, and I noticed they left no footprints on the dusty pavement. Midnight, perimeter check. All lights functioning, but they were dimmer than usual, like something was draining their power. The ocean sounded wrong too. Not the regular crash of waves, but a rhythmic pulsing, like a massive heartbeat. 1 a.m. Time to check for the basement door. I walked to where it should be, a spot I'd passed dozens of times. Blank wall between the supply closet and my apartment. Tonight, there was a door. Old wood, painted industrial green, with a sign that said, "Authorized personnel only," in faded red letters. I tried the handle. Locked. Good. I started to walk away when I heard it. A generator running, somewhere below. And underneath that, humming. A man's voice, humming the same tune Mrs. Whitmore had been humming. Eugene. 1:47 a.m. Ice machine activated. At 2 a.m., I found the entire bin filled with red ice. Not just a few pieces, all of it, crimson and dripping. It took 6 trips to throw it all over the cliff. On the last trip, I saw lights in the water below. Not boats, the lights were under the water, moving in patterns, like something enormous was swimming in circles. 2:30 a.m. Mr. Davidson checked in. "Birth year?" I asked. 1958. I gave him the key to room 11. He looked exactly the same as before, that forgettable face I couldn't quite focus on. "Big night coming," he said. "The node is restless. Can you feel it?" I could. A vibration in the floor, subtle but constant. What is the central node exactly? What's at the center of a spider's web? What's at the bottom of a whirlpool? It's the thing that created the soft spot, the reason this place exists. Some say it's alien. Some say it's divine. Some say it's just a cosmic accident that gained consciousness. All I know is it's hungry, and every few years, we need to feed it. Feed it what? The accumulated fear, pain, and madness that builds up in the motel. All those emotions, all that psychic energy from the permanent residents, the tragic deaths, the repeated hauntings. It pools here like water in a basin. The blue moon lets us channel it all to the node. If we don't, he shrugged, it'll take what it needs directly from the living. He walked toward his room, then paused. "Oh, and Mr. Chen, you might see yourself tonight. The timelines are already starting to split. Whatever you do, don't warn yourself about what's coming. The timeline where you're prepared is the timeline where everyone dies. 3 a.m. Room 7 started pounding, but tonight, voices accompanied it. "Let me out, let me out, let me out. I can fix myself, I can be better, I can be human again. Please, please, please." The voice devolved into wordless screaming. I turned the radio up until my ears hurt. 3:33 a.m. The phone rang. This time, it was my own voice on the other end. "Don't answer the door at 4:15. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my heart racing. That was my voice, slightly distorted by the old rotary phone speaker, but unmistakably mine. "Don't answer the door at 4:15. I wrote in the logbook, 3:33 call received, warning provided. My handwriting was barely legible. At 4 a.m., room 7 went silent. I checked my watch obsessively. 4:05, 4:10, 4:12. At 4:14, I heard footsteps approaching the office door. Heavy boots on concrete. At 4:15 exactly, someone knocked. I didn't move from my chair. I stared at the door, watching a shadow block the light from outside. The knock came again, more insistent. "Hello? Anyone there?" My car broke down on Route 1. I need to use your phone. The voice was friendly, concerned, utterly normal. I said nothing. Please, I can see you sitting there. I just need help. My wife is in the car. She's pregnant. We really need... The voice changed mid-sentence, dropping several octaves and gaining harmonics that shouldn't exist in human speech. Let me in. Let me in. Let me in. The door rattled in its frame. The windows shook. Papers flew off the desk from the pressure differential. The thing outside threw itself against the door again and again, each impact making the whole building groan. Then 4:16 a.m. arrived and it stopped. The shadow retreated. I heard those heavy boots walking away, and then nothing but the ocean's pulse. At 4:44 a.m., I stood facing the back wall. This time, when I started counting, I felt myself being pulled backward. Not physically, worse than that, like something was trying to pull my consciousness out of my body. At 30 seconds, I heard myself counting from somewhere else in the room. At 45, I was counting from 3 different positions simultaneously. At 60, I turned around. 3 versions of me stood in the office. One was covered in blood, staring at me with wide, terrified eyes. One was laughing hysterically, tears streaming down his face. One was perfectly calm, almost serene. "Don't look at us," the bloody one said. "It's already too late," the laughing one giggled. October 31st, 3:47 a.m., the calm one said. "The node will offer you a choice. Choose the third option." They faded like smoke, leaving only the smell of ozone and iron. The rest of the shift passed in a blur. I made coffee at 5 a.m. with shaking hands. Mrs. Whitmore arrived at 7 to find me still staring at the spot where my other selves had been. "You saw yourself," she said. Not a question. 3 of me. Ah, the timeline is fracturing early this year. The node must be more active than I thought. She paused. "Did any of them give you information?" I thought about the calm version's message. "Choose the third option." "No," I lied. She knew I was lying. I could see it in her pale eyes, but she didn't press. 4 days until the equalization, then 6 more until the blue moon. Things will get stranger, Mr. Chen. Much stranger. The question is whether you can handle it. Do I have a choice? You always have a choice. Eugene made his choice when he tried to quit. You could make the same one. She leaned closer. But I don't think you will. You're different from the others. You care about them. Them. The residents. The trapped ones. You gave fresh towels to room 3 without complaint. You protected that girl in room 8. You listen when the Jacobson family calls, even though the rules say you don't have to. That kind of empathy is rare here. It's also dangerous. She handed me my weekly pay. Get some rest. Tonight is the equalization. The barriers between rooms will dissolve from midnight to 4 a.m. The residents will be able to interact with each other for the first time in decades. It gets complicated. Night 5. The equalization. October 17th. I'd found 3 more journal entries from Eugene in his notebook, dated progressively closer to his disappearance, September 9th, 11:47 p.m. She said I could go, but the door won't open. The emergency exit, the office door, even the windows, they're sealed, not locked, sealed, like they're painted onto the walls. I can see my car in the parking lot, but I can't reach it. I'm going to try breaking a window. September 9th, 11:53 p.m. The window didn't break. The chair just bounced off it. I can hear something moving in the walls now, scratching, burrowing, getting closer. September 10th, 12:14 a.m. The basement door appeared. It's open. Something's calling me from down there. It sounds like my mother, but my mother's been dead for 6 years. I don't want to go down there, but I can't stay up here. The walls are breathing. The floor is getting soft. I'm going down. If I don't come back, tell my sister Amanda that I'm sorry I missed her wedding. Tell her the entry ended there. I wondered if Amanda ever found out what happened to her brother, or if she just thought he'd abandoned her. Mrs. Whitmore's warning about the equalization was understated, as I was learning all her warnings were. She'd given me a modified rule sheet. Equalization night protocols. All standard rules suspended from midnight to 4 a.m. Do not leave the office for any reason. Do not respond to any requests for help. Do not acknowledge anything you see through the windows. Keep the office lights on at all times. If any resident enters the office, be respectful but firm. If residents begin fighting, close your eyes and count to 100. The emergency phone, red rotary on bottom shelf, may ring. Answer only if it rings exactly 7 times. At 11 p.m., the shift began. At 11:47, the Morrison family, the ghost family from room 5, came to the office. Just wanted to let you know we'll be participating tonight, the father said. His children looked more solid now, less translucent. First equalization we've attended in 15 years. What exactly happens during an equalization? The mother smiled sadly. We get to see each other, talk to each other. For most of the year, we're isolated in our rooms, trapped in our own loops. But tonight, we can interact. It's the closest thing to life we have left. They left, and I watched them walk toward the center of the parking lot where other figures were beginning to gather. I recognized some of them. The woman in the yellow raincoat, Margaret, Mr. Davidson, what looked like an elderly couple from the 1940s based on their clothing. At midnight, the equalization began. The motel transformed. Lights appeared in all 12 rooms simultaneously. The doors opened and residents poured out. I counted at least 30 people, though there were only 12 rooms. They congregated in the parking lot, greeting each other like old friends at a reunion. Some hugged, some wept. Some just stood together in silence, grateful for company. Margaret in her yellow raincoat was talking animatedly with a man in a naval uniform. The Jacobson family stood at the cliff edge, looking down at the water that had killed them. The Morrison family sat in their minivan with another family, sharing photos that flickered in and out of existence. Then I saw him emerge from room 3. He was tall, maybe 7 feet, and thin in a way that suggested something other than malnutrition. His limbs were too long, his joints bent in too many places, and his face was beautiful in an alien way. Sharp cheekbones, eyes that reflected light like a cat's, skin that seemed to shift between human and something scaled. He wore a suit from the 1920s, impeccably maintained. This was the voice from room 3, the one who'd warned me about the journal. He walked among the other residents like a king among subjects. They parted for him, some nodding respectfully, others averting their eyes. He spoke to each group briefly, and I saw something pass between them. Not objects, but something that looked like threads of light, flowing from them to him and back again. At 1 a.m., I checked for the basement door. It existed, and tonight it was unlocked. I could hear multiple generators running below, and that humming, Eugene's humming, had been joined by other voices. How many night clocks had become part of the infrastructure? I locked it from the outside and pocketed the key. At 1:30 a.m., fighting broke out. 2 men, both looked like they died in the 1970s based on their clothes, started screaming at each other in the parking lot. Something about territory, about who had claim to which shadows, who had the right to manifest on which nights. The argument escalated to violence quickly. One punched the other, and where his fist connected, reality rippled like water. The other man's face collapsed inward, then reconstructed itself into something with too many eyes. I closed my eyes and started counting. At 30, I heard the sounds of reality tearing. At 60, something that sounded like bones breaking in reverse. At 100, silence. When I opened my eyes, both men were gone. The tall man from room 3 stood where they'd been, looking displeased. He glanced toward the office, and even from this distance, I felt the weight of his gaze. At 2 a.m., he walked to the office and came inside. Up close, he was even more disturbing. His proportions were wrong in ways that made my depth perception fail. Looking at him was like looking at an optical illusion. Mr. Chen, we haven't been properly introduced. I'm Nathaniel, though that's not the name I was born with. That language doesn't exist anymore. How long have you been in room 3? Since 1953, when the motel was built. I was the first resident. You might say I helped to design this place. He looked around the office with something like nostalgia. It's been a good prison, comfortable, the rules are fair. You're here voluntarily. Voluntary is a strong word. I made a choice. I did something terrible in 1947, something that broke fundamental laws of reality. The choice was dissolution, complete erasure from existence, or containment. I chose containment. He smiled, showing teeth that were just slightly too sharp. I've had 70 years to regret it. What did you do? I tried to bring someone back from death. Not necromancy, not resurrection. I tried to reverse causality itself, to make it so she'd never died. The universe doesn't appreciate that kind of tampering. When reality snapped back, it took an entire town with it. 3,000 people just unmade. Never born, never existed, never even remembered except by me. He pulled a photograph from his pocket, black and white, showing a beautiful woman in 1940s dress. Her name was Clara. She died in a car accident in 1946. I loved her so much I broke the world trying to save her. The things that enforce reality's laws offered me this deal. Eternal existence in room 3, helping to maintain the soft spot, making sure others don't make my mistake. In exchange, I get to remember her. I get to keep this photograph. Most days, that feels like enough. And the other residents? Some made deals like I did. Some are here as punishment. Some are here because they died in ways that left them unable to move on. The Jacobsons, for instance. And some, he glanced toward room 7. Some are too dangerous to exist anywhere else. Room 7's door stood open for the first time. I could see inside. What I saw made my stomach turn. It wasn't a person anymore. It was a collection of human parts arranged in a configuration that hurt to look at. Limbs connected to limbs, faces emerging from torsos, hands growing from shoulders. It was trying to build itself into something acceptable, something forgivable, but it had forgotten what that looked like. Don't stare at it, Nathaniel advised. It considers eye contact an invitation. At 3 a.m., Margaret in her yellow raincoat approached the office. Nathaniel let her in. I wanted to thank you, she said to me, for putting my money in the envelope, for listening to my call even though you don't have to. What are you calling? I asked. When you use the phone? My daughter. The number I dialed doesn't exist anymore. She moved, changed numbers, got married and took a new name. But for 3 minutes every night, I call the number I remember, and I tell her I'm sorry for what I did. What did you do? I jumped off the cliff. Right there. She pointed to a spot near room 12. January 15th, 1967. I was 28 years old. I had a 6-year-old daughter, and I couldn't handle it anymore. My husband was gone. My mother wouldn't help. I was drowning in debt and despair. So I drove here, parked, and jumped. They found my body 3 days later. She touched the window, her fingers leaving frost patterns. I've been calling my daughter every night since, leaving messages she'll never hear, apologizing to someone who's now older than I ever got to be. She's 63 now, lives in California, has grandchildren. I know because sometimes the phone connects, not to her number but to her house, and I can hear her life continuing without me. I'm sorry, I said. Don't be. This is my penance, my choice. Every night I get 3 minutes to remember what I threw away. It's appropriate. She smiled. You're kind, Mr. Chen. Kinder than most clerks. That will either save you or destroy you when the blue moon comes. At 3:33 a.m., the phone rang. I picked it up, expecting the Jacobson family. Instead, it was Mrs. Whitmore. Mr. Chen, Are you following the equalization protocols? Yes, Mom. Good. Don't leave the office, no matter what you see. The residents are mostly harmless during equalization, but their combined presence thins the barrier significantly. Things from outside might try to push through, and they'll look like residents to blend in. How do I tell the difference? Real residents will know your name. The others won't, not at first. They have to steal that information from the residents' memories, which takes time. If someone approaches and doesn't use your name, assume they're not what they appear. Understood. At 3:47 a.m., someone who looked exactly like me walked past the office window. He was holding a gun, looked like a 9mm, and his face was set in grim determination. He didn't look at me, just walked purposefully toward the cliff edge, raised the gun to his head, and pulled the trigger. The sound was enormous. Every resident in the parking lot turned to look. My doppelganger's body crumpled, fell, and then simply faded away like mist. Nathaniel appeared at my window. Failed timeline. That's the version of you that couldn't handle the blue moon. He killed himself rather than face what's coming. Don't worry, you're not predestined to make the same choice. The timelines branch at every decision. You're just seeing the branches that ended badly. At 4 a.m. exactly, the equalization ended. The residents returned to their rooms in orderly fashion, like students heading back to class after recess. Doors closed, lights went out. The motel returned to its normal state of isolated hauntings. Nathaniel was the last to return to his room. Before he went, inside, he called out, "5 days until the blue moon, Mr. Chen. Start thinking about what you're willing to sacrifice. The node will ask for payment, and it always collects." The rest of the shift was mercifully quiet. Mrs. Whitmore arrived at 7 in Gash with my pay and a new addendum to the rules. Rule 19. Starting October 24th, the motel will shift between multiple temporal states. If you notice anachronisms, old technology appearing, architecture changing, people from wrong eras, do not comment on them. The timeline is stabilizing itself. Rule 20. On October 30th, you must perform the preparation ritual. Instructions will be provided. Do not deviate from these instructions in any way. What's the preparation ritual? I asked. You'll learn tomorrow night, she said. After you meet the last resident, the one we keep in room 1. I thought room 1 was empty. Room 1 is never empty. Room 1 can't be empty. It's the anchor point, the foundation of everything else. But the occupant only manifests once per cycle, 6 days before the blue moon, to brief the night clerk on their role in the coming event. And what is my role? She smiled that empty smile. You're the conduit, the living connection between the residents and the node. On the blue moon, you'll channel their accumulated energy to feed it. The process is intense, but survivable. Usually? One of your predecessors had a heart attack during the channeling. Another suffered an aneurysm. But most make it through intact, physically at least. Mentally. She shrugged. You're stronger than you think, Mr. Chen. You'll survive. I wasn't sure if that was a prediction or a threat. Night, 6 to 9. The acceleration. The next 4 nights blurred together in a cascade of impossible events. Time was becoming unstable, the motel flickering between different eras like a television changing channels. On night 6, October 18th, I checked in a couple from 1965 who paid with coins that no longer existed, drove a car that hadn't been manufactured yet, and spoke in slang from the 1990s. They existed in 3 time periods simultaneously and seemed unaware of the contradiction. On night 7, October 19th, I encountered myself again. This time a version that claimed to have been working at the motel for 17 years. He was grizzled, scarred, missing 2 fingers on his left hand. Don't trust the calm one, he told me before vanishing. The calm version of you is already working for them. On night 8th, October 20th, the Jacobson family stopped calling. Instead, I saw them standing in the parking lot at 3:33 a.m., holding hands, looking toward room 12 with infinite longing. They'd stopped trying to check in. Now they just stood vigil, waiting for something. On night 9, October 21st, room 7's occupant got loose. It happened at 2:47 a.m. I heard the door splinter, not break, splinter, like reality itself was cracking. The pounding that normally stayed contained within room 7 erupted into the parking lot. Through the window, I saw it. The thing that had been a man, configured now into something spider-like, all limbs and faces and grasping hands. It scuttled toward the office. I grabbed the emergency phone, the red rotary from the bottom shelf, and dialed the only number written on it, 000. Mrs. Whitmore answered immediately. "It's out." "Yes." "Don't leave the office. Nathaniel will handle it." Room 3's door opened and Nathaniel emerged. He dropped his human appearance entirely now. What walked out was something tall and segmented, with too many joints and skin that looked like stars against a void. He spread his arms, or what I thought were arms, and spoke in a language that made my ears bleed. The thing from room 7 stopped mid-scuttle. It tried to move forward, but Nathaniel spoke again, and reality hardened around the creature like amber. It was frozen, suspended in the air, all its limbs locked in mid-motion. Nathaniel carried it back to room 7 like a parent carrying a misbehaving child. I heard him speaking softly, almost gently, in that reality-breaking language. The door closed. New locks appeared on it. Not mechanical locks, but symbols that hurt to look at, written in light that didn't quite exist. Nathaniel resumed his human form and came to the office. Blood ran from his ears and nose. Apparently speaking that language hurt him too. "That's the third time he's escaped in 70 years, Nathaniel said, wiping blood from his face. "Each time, he gets closer to remembering what form would set him free. If he ever succeeds..." He didn't finish the thought. "What would happen?" "Do you know what he did before he became that? He killed 43 people over 2 years, took them apart to understand how humans worked. When they executed him, something was waiting for him, something that offered to let him continue his work for eternity. He accepted, not understanding that he'd become his own subject. Now he practices on himself, trying to find a configuration of parts that would make him human enough to escape. If he ever does, he'll have an eternity of practice in dismantling people. The motel contains him, but just barely.